reintroduce myself. My name's Darren Coyne. I think I'm speaking now because I am, if you want to define me as such, a campaigner or an activist. I'm a care leaver, as you all know. And I work for the Care Leavers Association, which is a user-led charity. We're a broad church in terms of a charity, and we support lots and lots of people who are care experienced of all ages, and people will come through to us asking for advice, guidance and information, and access to records is one of those issues that lots of people, not just in this country but from across the world, come through to our organisation and ask for advice and guidance on. We do have what you might call casework, as it were, and that involves being able to support any individual through the process of a subject access request. We have some guidance. We put together some template letters to make that written request to the authority, and we also are able to speak to the care leaver about what to expect, what they will or what they won't get in that file, and also offer a word of caution, i.e. there might be lots of information in that file that you might not have been privy to and therefore might not be aware of, and when you do get that file and read it, there might be some difficult material to engage with, so it'd be very important for you to find that support. However, as a campaigner, I recognise that that support is not forthcoming. In fact, it's non-existent. If you're a care leaver over a particular age, and that brings me to the point of, we've been speaking all day long about care leavers. Well, who are care leavers? Care leavers for us as a charity could be looked at as anyone that spent any time in the care system as a child, whether that be a day, a week, a month, a year, or your entire childhood. However, the state will define you as a care leaver dependent on the amount of time you spent in care, the ages at which you were in care, and the section of the Children's Act under which you were in the care system. If you qualify, you become an eligible care leaver, and as an eligible care leaver, you're entitled to support from leaving care provisions. However, if you're one of them groups that don't fit within that very narrowly defined definition of a care leaver, and you come to apply for your files, the support that you will get and the recognition that you will get as a care leaver is pretty much non-existent. And in the main, when people come along and apply for their files, in our experience, and I grant that is only ever anecdotal because we've not done any research into that, we find that the majority of people that we support are not supported when they go and apply for their files to the local authority. So, on the back of that, we as an organisation, myself, along with the Association of Child Abuse Lawyers, the British Association of Adoption and Fostering, now Core and Bath and Bernardo's, we collaborated and formed and founded a group called the Access to Records Campaign Group. The Access to Records Campaign Group exists to try to lobby for those legislative changes, those legislative provisions that enshrine in legislation the support needs of adult care leavers, which at the moment, as I've just said, is non-existent. Now, we've had a couple of successes there. We did work with Baroness Lola Young, a peer who supported us as a parliamentarian lead, and she tabled an amendment to the Children and Families Act 2014. That amendment wasn't taken, but a concession was offered, and that concession was some statutory guidance. That statutory guidance is now a section within the guidance that guides local authorities in their leaving care provisions. However, the problem with that guidance is most people in data protection won't know that that guidance exists. And those people in social care who do know that that guidance exists are not privy to data protection law. So there is this disjoint in local authorities. We find that those in social care don't necessarily always understand data protection, and those in data protection don't always understand social care. So we seek as a group to look for levers that we can use to lobby for policy change. And we held an event in November 18, and that event brought together lots and lots of stakeholders, and on the back of that we've written a set of standards. Them standards are in draft at the moment, but what we should be doing is using them as a lever to lobby the Department for Education, Ofsted, the local government association, etc., to ensure that the support needs of care leavers across the life course, not just them young care leavers as defined by the state are supported in terms of their access to files process. I think one of the things I wanted to say was in relation to language. And I think as a care leaver that works in the organisation that I do and supporting lots and lots of care leavers who are young and older, I recognise that there's a particular language that's used. If you look at the Children Act and the Leaving Care Act now, the language used in that is of relevance. You are more or less relevant as a care leaver, dependent on, as you said, your length of time in care. If you don't fall within that relevant category, I then beg the question of, well, does that make me as a 47-year-old man and a care leaver seeking access to my files irrelevant? Well, no, it doesn't. So then I go and apply for my files and I find that there's even more language. That's almost a versus language. I'm a data subject. The people that hold my file is a data controller. I need to go to that data controller as a data subject to ask them for permission to access the information that they hold about me. However, when I receive that information, that data controller has made a decision about what parts of that information I can or can't see. And that decision that they've made to redact that information has been entirely, in my mind, based on their own subjectivity. They've used their discretion to decide what should and what shouldn't be redacted. And then I'm sent out an envelope with all that information in with no explanation at all as to what has been redacted and why that's been redacted. Then when I go back as that data subject to that data controller, I find myself in a fight. And it's almost a versus between the data controller and the data subject. And I believe, and the Access to Records Campaign Group also believes, that what we should be doing is looking outside of the Data Protection Act for a legislative route that enshrines the support needs of care leavers, because the Data Protection Act is not fit for purpose when it comes to specifically thinking about the access rights of care leavers to access their information. We don't know what that legislative route is right now, but we seek to look and we seek to campaign and we seek to lobby to find that route through which we can ensure that care leavers almost have parity with those who have been adopted. If you've been adopted in this country, you are protected in legislation. If you're a care leaver in this country, you're not protected in legislation. And if you're a care leaver of a particular age, you're completely forgotten about in terms of being a care leaver. Now, on one final point, children in care are classed as looked after by their corporate parent. And at 18, 21 or 25, that corporate parenting responsibility comes to an end. But the local authority will retain your file for 75 years. Well, there is an argument in that, is there not? That if you retain my file for 75 years, you retain an element of your corporate parenting responsibilities towards me. And the same as if I go home to my mum and dad and ask them to look at my photo album, were I able to, I should be able to go back to the local authority and say, I want to look at the photo album, which is my file. And you should, as my parent, as my corporate parent, retain an element of your corporate parenting responsibilities to support me to access that information regardless of my age. I don't want a leaving care worker. I'm a grown man. I can look after myself and live my own life. I've got my own house. I don't need a flat. And I've got my own carpets. I don't need a carpet. Nor do I need a leaving care grant. What I do need is to be able to go back to the people that created a file about me so they can explain to me why they wrote it and how they wrote it and why the information that they've given me has massive missing parts in it. So I think I just wanted to introduce to you the Care Leavers Association and the Access to Records Campaign Group. You can look at the website, Access to Records Campaign Group on Google will take you to our website, and our website will give you access to lots and lots of the work that we've been doing as a campaign group to try to push forward on this particular issue. And I know we're strapped for time, so I'll bring it to an end there. Is that okay? Thank you.
These are my files that you're going to be looking at while I'm doing the talking. And as I did laugh earlier, this is my moment. So the first bit's about me and then a bit about what I've done since. To be honest, I never really thought about my care records. I was mum of 2 children and all I was concerned about was raising them. But then they started asking me the questions. So about 4 years ago, at the age of 48, I went looking for my care records, so I'm another older care leaver that went looking for them. I did what most care leavers did. I started looking into the family history, and I went and met my family. I wasn't welcomed to the bosom of the family with love and hugs and all the rest of it. I was, I was unlovable. I was the naughty kid, and they had never done anything wrong. I needed to be locked up, and I'd got a screw loose. So I filed for my records so I could get the truth, put my story together. I applied to Birmingham Children's Trust, I will name them, and filled in the forms and waited to be put onto their schedule, which they forgot to do. So I waited again, and also for a social worker. After making numerous phone calls, and about 20 weeks later, a social worker rang me to say she was doing my files and would be in touch once the redaction had been done. Lovely redaction. We agreed that she would come to the house. She arrived with her one cardboard box with 13 years of my life inside it. We did have a cup of tea. I'm an older person, so I'll be nice and I'll be polite. And I did say thank you to her. The social worker did tell me there was not a lot in the box, so nothing to worry about. Really, there was a lot of important stuff in there. It was my life, about how I had been taken from my family and my sister while in the system, the only family I had left. She said to phone her if I needed anything. I shut the door and looked at my box. That was it. That was all I was worth. Even after all this time, I was made to feel worthless. They had done nothing for me since I was 16, and they had kicked me out. So now I know people say, take your time, have support, be in a safe place. No chance. Cup of tea and the lid came off. It was hard going at times, and they were not in any order, as you can see. They were just all over the place in the box. Blank pages, yes, photocopied blank empty pages, and others were so blacked out. There was not a lot there to see or read. Only the records from the second residential home. There is nothing from the first one. There's no records of that chapter in my life. I will never know about or be able to find out. I was crying tears of joy 1 minute because I'd read my birth weight and the time of my birth, which meant a lot to me as a mom. But then sobbing my heart out because I saw the document my mother had signed about parental rejection. I actually think it's one of the pictures up there. No, you're okay. Which totally knocked me sideways. Hospital forms saying about me being a battered child and that I was totally unwanted by my parents. That was really hard, again, being a mum myself. Then I saw the NSPCC report. I never even knew they'd been involved in my life. Reading their report was shocking. To state the state I was in, my home life, and saying that I was frequently running away from home. I was 5 years old and running away from home. Getting your records is the start of trying to piece together your life. So what have I done with my files now? I wrote to the NSPCC and Birmingham Children's Trust. The NSPCC were not very forthcoming with responding until I had a rant on Twitter because they thought I was making a complaint. I just wanted to know why they'd put me in a children's home and never did anything with me. They took me from my family, from one hellhole, and put me into another. Their response was, we put you into a state-run residential home, so it was presumed you would be okay. They had no records of me, as back in the 70s, they only kept them for 7 years. So there is no records about this chapter in my life also. I also wrote to Birmingham Children's Trust about my life in residential care, how it had left me feeling and the lifelong impact it had on me. The assistant director rang me 3 days later, and a couple of days later phoned me and came to visit me in my home. I was invited to the council house, but I didn't want to go. If I was confronting them, I was doing it on my own territory, where I felt safe. He and the head social worker came. We spent a few hours talking and sharing. From this meeting, I have since gone into the trust and met with the heads of departments and spoke about the impact of residential care on me and my family. During these talks, it turned out that the assistant director had never seen or knew the process of accessing your records. So I reapplied for them again with him coming through each step of it with me. From the form asking my name, which homes I'd been in, and then their reply was, "Dear Sir, Madam." He was shocked and embarrassed by how cold and inhuman the process was. I then went into the records and legal department and spoke about my files, the files that they did, and I actually met the social worker that did it to then ask her why she'd redacted what she'd done, why she left the sentence that she had, and obviously 4 years later she can't recall a lot of it. So at this point, I took a deep breath and went public. With the help and research from Victoria, we went live on air at BBC West Midlands and brought Andy Pepper in to answer questions on how Birmingham would change how to access the records and how it would be done and is being done. So although it will not change my files or the awful process I went through, it will and has changed for those accessing them now in Birmingham, and hopefully things will continue to improve in the future, ensuring that care leavers feel valued and affirmed as members of society. This is up to us all to continue speaking out and raising awareness together.
Hello everybody, I'm David Holmes, the Chief Executive of a charity called Family Action, and I want to introduce you to a new service that we're creating called Family Connect that may already have been mentioned a couple of times today, but we've just heard incredibly powerful testimonies from two care leavers, and what I wanted to say at the beginning is that this new service is meant to help. It's meant to provide practical help. So I want to just say a little bit more about it now. So, Family Action. So why is Family Action doing something in this area? Well, we're a very old charity. We were set up in 1869, and we provide community-based services now nationally across England, Wales, and the Isle of Man. And our core work is providing children, families, adults with practical, emotional, and where we can, financial support. We work with at least 45,000 families a year and hundreds of thousands of children. And you can see from this slide that our work is very varied. So we work with very young children, we work in the family home with families that have lots of complex difficulties. We provide targeted services, perhaps to a family with a child with special educational needs, and lots of adult mental health and well-being work too. We have lots of therapeutic work. We provide national programs as well, such as the National School Breakfast Programme. We're very old, so we give grants to people in crisis, and we have a helpline called Family Line, which is open every day of the year to help people in difficulty with family issues. But I have just like everybody else here, I have a history too. So for a long time, I was chief exec of the British Association for Adoption and Fostering. And I remember throughout that period, one of the issues that struck me the most was just how unnecessarily difficult it was for people who, for whatever reason, had been separated from their birth families to access their records. And I was lucky enough in Bath to work with somebody called Julia Feast, who's in the audience today, who, for all of those of you who know her, is just a complete expert on access to information. And I remember more than 10 years ago, Julia and I working on the Adoption Search and Reunion website that Bath ran, but also years and years ago, applying to, I think it was the Department of Health at the time, to try and get some extension funding for that website so that it could cover care records as well. But it never happened. Clearly government had other priorities. But I've always wanted to try and create a national resource that would be a platform that anybody could access if they wanted to find out more information, whether they were adopted, whether they were in care, whether they're donor conceived, whether they've been separated from family for any other reason. But crucially, it had to be free. So, today in 2019, through a lot of, I think, happy coincidences, that service is going to happen. It's going to launch. It's going to be called Family Connect. And the idea is that it will help people who are adopted, in care, donor conceived, or who have, for any other reason, lost touch with their family members, to learn how to search for and access information about their past, but also to give really practical information about the personal and emotional consequences of searching. You don't need me to repeat what we've just heard our colleagues here say so eloquently about the often really traumatic experience of searching for information. But why should it be so hard in England in 2019 to even find the phone number of the person that you need to contact in a local authority, even to begin the journey, let alone 4 years later where you've been searching for records and had them all redacted. So the idea is that Family Connect is just a platform. It's a source of information. At the very least, I want it to have telephone numbers that people can ring in order to access information, but lots of practical resources as well from people who've gone through this journey before about what to expect along that journey. I hope there will be lots of film clips on it, interviews, but also just wise advice to make that journey that little bit easier. It's not meant to replace anything that already exists or to compete with anything. I hope, though, that other organisations who are already doing brilliant work in this space will connect to it and that we can connect to them. Crucially, as I said before, it's free. The point is that it's there forever and that people can just use it and benefit from it. So as I say on this slide, this isn't something that we can create on our own, although we're going to have a really good go to put together a good basic source of information that will launch in October. But if we get this right, and if we do it in the right way, and if we collaborate well, then it has the potential to make a difference to many people. So it will have key information topics, things to think about before you start, emotional advice, practical information, experience and knowledge about what will happen when you make contact, lots of practical reflections on coping, lots of information about the legals. But it can build over time. It can build and get better. In the meantime, because Julia and I have been talking about this for about 3 years, Family Action merged with PAC UK, which is England's largest adoption support agency. And I'm delighted that they came into Family Action's family of services last December. And Jan Slater, their director, is here in the audience. So that is just another reason why I'm so glad that Family Action is hosting this new service, because given PAC's range of work, we're now working with many more adoptive families, birth families, adopted families, and the professionals who support them. But what I love about Family Connect is it's not just about adoption, it goes further than the Adoption Search and Reunion website. So it will be for all people who, for whatever reason, have become separated from their family. So, at the moment, we're working hard on content creation. We're very excited that UCL's wonderful MIRRA project has said that we can host the materials that they've developed through their research on Family Connect. And that's all about ensuring really wide access to those materials. We're testing the site with those who have lived experience of searching, and we want to collaborate more there and get this as right as we can. It will launch in October 2019, but it won't be the finished product. We'll have plenty more to do, and my hope is that it will grow far into the future. And that's it. So Family Connect, it's a new service, it's a free service, it's a service for all of us in this room, but everybody who wants to go on that journey to find out about their past. Please support it. Thank you.